Aaron, what's going on? Hey, I'm pretty excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is the risks you don't even know you're taking as you get ready for military transition. You ready to chat today?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready.
Sweet. All right, let's talk about this first slide here. Let's just go ahead and build this thing out. So, really, as a transitioning military member or military spouse, what we're really talking about at pre-veteran is you have essentially two root causes you might not be aware of, which is the topic of this today. So, the first one we want to talk to you about is this environment that you're going into. And really, this environment starts 2 to 3 years out. And it's extremely complex. It's extremely multifaceted. For example, employment is just one line item. There are other line items. There's getting your VA claim right. There's getting your financial house in order. There are many others, but those are just three of the many. So that environment is so complex and there's so many different things to do. That is certainly a root cause when it comes to military transition. What do you think, Aaron?
100% agree. I'm going to give my own personal story. When I was getting out, I was so inundated with all the things I had going on that I didn't even get private life insurance. So if something would have happened to me, between me getting out and when I had actually figured that out, because I didn't get private life insurance through my first job either, but it was probably 4 or 5 months gap between that and me actually getting a private policy. So that's a perfect example that my whole family was at risk for that gap of time. And that was a risk I didn't even know I was taking because I didn't even know I needed to switch my life insurance or that I didn't do anything about that. But I was so stressed and just trying to figure out my next job and what's next that I totally missed it.
And that's like a big takeaway, right? So the folks that are listening in or watching on YouTube here, when we do talk about this environment, you're going to know that this environment is upcoming because at the end of the day, transition is a physiological event, which means it's going to trigger your autonomic nervous system, which means your fight or flight response. So if you find yourself thinking about this during the day or it bubbling up in your mind, or if it's keeping you up in the middle of the night because you know you have this complex, multifaceted event coming your way, aka transition. This is when you really need to start addressing it, which is why we say it's 2 to 3 years prior. So the next kind of part to that that we want to talk about is, let's go back one slide. When we talk about the processing and decision making here, so because it's a complex environment and because there's so many unknowns, you're going to have challenges processing and making decisions on that. Now, for a lot of military people, to include myself, right, as I was going through about 10 years ago, I was used to doing really complex things. So therefore, when this kind of came up, I thought I'd be all right, right? It's something we've all done hard things. You did hard things in the Navy. I did hard things in the Air Force. So why is this so different? And we're going to get into that in a minute, but just a couple, what are your thoughts on the processing decision making as a root cause, Aaron?
Yeah, no, I think that's hard for most people to accept right off the bat, and they probably in their brains already fighting against that because they probably write decision making on their resume, right? Like I see that as a strength for a lot of military people. But there's a reason that you can say that in a military context. You have a background and experience with whatever you're saying you have good decision making with. It's because you've been in that line of work for a period of time and you understand the environment you're in. And so you can make good decisions in that environment. But I'll tell you that the first unit you showed up to, if we would have grabbed you on day one at your first unit and said, "Hey, I need you to make this major decision for the command right now," you would have totally failed and probably made the wrong call because you didn't know what the unit needed, how it operated, what it did. And this is a perfect analogy for your transition out of the military into the private sector because you're going into a new environment where you're going to be stepping into a job that you don't fully understand. You don't fully understand the company yet. But we're going to talk about how you can do a better job being more prepared and step into that environment with a lot more knowledge than just going in blank. But hopefully it's a good analogy and helps folks to realize that, hey, if we would have asked you to make good decisions on day one at your new unit, probably wouldn't have gone well. And that's exactly what we're talking about here with transition.
100%. Before you go to the next slide, what we want to show is kind of the bumper sticker at the bottom. So I know that you might not believe this if you're listening in and if you're a couple years out or a couple months out, but you are leaving the military with significant gaps and misalignments. That shouldn't be contentious. Let's get really specific. Let's go to the next slide. So because Pre-Veteran is a cognitive neuroscience-based company, let's talk about how you're thinking and making decisions, because thoughts drive behaviors, behaviors drive decisions, and decisions dictate outcomes. So when you talk about this, that complex environment we were talking about that's multifaceted with a bunch of different line items, of which employment is just one, the next thing is how you're going to process that information. So from a long-term memory standpoint, we all, every one of us, E1 to O10, is approaching transition from an ignorant hubris standpoint, which means you don't know about the environment. And Aaron, you were talking about that just a moment ago. It's a totally new environment. But the other part of that is the hubris piece is you think you can figure it out somehow, but you don't know how to do it. So really, this is approaching it from really bad, from a bad perspective, an unproductive perspective. So let's prove that to you. So from an ignorance piece, we're a cognitive neuroscience-based company. So that means that your thoughts matter. And when your brain is trying to think through things, it's going to call or recall rather your long-term memory. The ignorance side of that is you haven't done this before. You haven't gone back into the private sector and certainly haven't been employed in the private sector. So you could build that out, Aaron. So as you do this, right, not surprisingly, in all the research from Syracuse University, USC, VA studies, people come out and they say, I can't see a clear path forward. It's very frustrating for us military people because we tend to be type A and are very used to seeing complex military environments and being able to navigate from point A to point Z. In this case, we can't. And in fact, what happened is your cognition or your brain processes stop. You can't think through the veil. That's what people say. Now, what you don't know is your brain then goes out there without your knowledge or volition and finds information from the external environment, pulls them into your thinking process, which is where you get this, should I do something different, get my PMP, Six Sigma, should I use my GI Bill, or just get a skill bridge? And this is what then your brain will bring in and try to process as being the answer. But we all know that that just becomes noise, and you're going to end up typically, after we talk to students, you're going to go try to follow the leads on each one of these, which is going to take time away from you, resources away from you, and then are going to increase anxiety and stress because it's this noise in your mind.
100% agree. And, as someone who got my PMP and was doing this very thing, I just want to say that this is a strong force, but you need to go one layer deeper in the questions you're asking yourself, that if you're doing these activities, why are you doing them? If you're getting your PMP, are you going to work in project management 100%? That's what you want to do? Or are you just kind of doing a thing to do a thing? And like Jason said, you're in a constrained environment with limited time to figure your transition out with a lot of important stuff to do. And if you're taking time away from that to do something which isn't going to serve you well, then it's not a good idea. And you need to be putting your energy towards something more productive.
Absolutely. So where we talk about the left side of the memory spectrum, where you don't have memory, long-term memory to recall, the other side is actually a little more pernicious. So go ahead and build that out. So when we talk about the hubris, this is the fact that without any shadow of a doubt, your brain will use long-term memory that is military related and try to use it to apply it to the private sector. And it's a little more insidious than that too, because you've done so many cognitive iterations within the military ecosystem, it's become a heuristic, a lot of that, which means it's a neural pathway that's so well traveled, it's going to derive to you a conclusion, a judgment, or decision without any of your thinking. So the way this will sound in your head is that when a topic comes up, something just pops into your mind, right? So like, for example, the top bullet there, transitions coming up. I've done things difficult before. So the big booming voice in your head will be like, I can figure this out on my own. I'm good. And what this really translates to is people are going to delay their transition, which increases stress even more, fractures relationships, whether it's with your spouse or whether it's with your coworkers. but it does become problematic. So when we talk about the heuristic piece, it does present itself in your mind as kind of like a statement where your brain is just telling you something that doesn't require thought. So another one that's really pernicious is for employment specifically, where you have your primary and secondary MOS rate or AFSC. You really have done what the unit has done, or sorry, what the unit has needed. So what you do is you become a generalist by trade. And it's not surprising that as you go thinking about the private sector, you're going to try to approach that with the same mindset of, you know what, the private sector needs a servant leader. It needs someone, or just give me a chance. And this is a major disconnect. And this is what we talk about with gaps and misalignments, right? This is a massive misalignment that really requires some individual training and some different thinking and a different process to be able to do that. But two others are, I don't need to change, I'm good, and then things will work out fine. They always have. What's interesting about the heuristic, Aaron, is that always, if you interrogate them one question deeper, they seem to not hold up under their own weight and they kind of fall apart.
Definitely. And I'm gonna, close the slide deck out here to say, so what? Like, we have all this information. What does that help us do? How is this practical information? And here's what I'll say, that, the current system is not set up for success in this way to address the issues that we just brought up, that there are gaps and misalignments. Obviously, there are still gaps and misalignments after decades of the current system, which folks are using to get out of the military. So we need to pivot, think about this differently, and figure out a way to solve this. And I think we've uniquely identified that at Pre-Veteran with our employment prep course, which please go check out at our website, preveteran.com. A lot of testimonials from successful students there, getting not only the job they wanted, where they wanted, but also negotiating higher salaries and being wildly successful. So awesome outcomes we've gotten through our program. And then as well as we have a webinar coming up May 31st. We are hosting a webinar. If you want to just learn more about our programs for free, that's a free 1 hour webinar where you can ask your questions, kind of kick the tires and see if what we're talking about bears any weight to your transition and what you're going through. So we kind of know it does, because we've talked to so many veterans that we know that this information can help you. And we give you the framework to really make those decisions and navigate what is best for you and your family. And we want that to come to fruition. So we want to see better outcomes. And I think we got a good way to do that.
And you know what the best part is, Aaron? You're a pre-veteran alumni yourself. So
That's right.
total testimonial of that. So, hey, wrapping up here, just like what Aaron said, we know there's a lot of chaos kind of going on in your mind right now, a lot of uncertainty. We could tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that can be corrected with individual training in the right ecosystem. Like Aaron said, we are already doing that with our employment prep course. Check it out on our courses page. We have courses every February, June, and October of every year, and we're getting increasing number of people in there. So your cohorts are a lot of fun. What makes that even more exciting is after you finish that, you go into a community where we take care of literally all your transition needs. You can begin outsourcing things and actually enjoy your last 2 years of service, have better relationships, be healthier, be happier. It is possible. It's happening right now with pre-veterans all over the place. So first step might be go to our webinar. We hold webinars all the time, but the next one is May 31st. We're looking to see you there. Aaron, awesome chatting with you.
Yes, and to get to the webinar, please go to our Pre-Veteran page on LinkedIn and you will see the event there. We hope to see you there.
And we'll also put a link in the comments below.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.